Bahnstormers fans, it's the last Friday of the month, so it's that time again. Tea stroll. Right, I thought I'd better address the thumbnail from this month's tea slide. Here at Classic Bahnstormers, we're not normally in the business of destroying old BMWs. This was once a 518. We bought it in a state of dismantle. Somebody else had already dismantled it for parts, broken it up for parts, and it had had considerable chunks chopped out of it. It was going to be scrapped, and we were offered the chance to buy the shell because there are some very good cuts left on it. We're very grateful to have been offered that chance too. Some of these parts are difficult to make, difficult to find. So the front panel on this is particularly good. The chassis rail, which we are finding increasingly driver side chassis rails to be in a very poor state. The ABS tray, although this car obviously doesn't have ABS being a 518, battery tray are very good, and these inner front wings also very good. It did have a rear end, and Graham has been cutting it up, but we'll add all these cuts to our panel store. So in a strange sort of way, this car obviously will go on leading a useful life, keeping other cars on the road. So we're starting in the Fab Bay this month. Scott's been working on this lovely orange 2002. It's quite a nice car. It's been owned by a father and son for a little while. I think it was a COVID project. Came in for an appraisal. We went right through it, top to bottom, front to back. Came up with a bit of a strategic plan to improve the car. So the first major improvement is the boot floor. The boot floor was some parts steel, some parts sealer and Sikaflex. As you can see, we've put an entire boot floor in here. So it's been taken back to, can't quite reach that swage line there. Scott's made some repairs to the wheel tubs. Generally, this was pretty good actually. So he's made some repairs to the lower part of the rear wheel tubs, both sides. We've ended up replacing most of the valance all the way around. You can just about see the join there. Just about, but as I think you'll agree, he's made a pretty good job of it. So we've got a complete panel. Actually, a pretty good panel, did fit really well, and you can see the quality of the welding there. I mean, that is just lovely, isn't it? So yeah, we put a complete panel in it, and then as I say, we have done the lower valance all the way around from about here, bit of wheel arch. The complete rear panel here, lower rear panel here. We've taken a dent out here. There was quite a large dent there, which I've taken out. And then this side was a little bit more complicated. Unfortunately, the panel came up to about there, and there was a bit of rust here. So we couldn't really, in all good consciousness, stop just there, especially as we're obviously going to be painting the rear quarter panel on both sides. There's quite a lot of work inside, which I will just show you. So it is kind of bitty, this one, unfortunately, but you know, we've got to work within the budget we've been set. So Scott has cleaned up all this section. You can see he spot welded the panel in as the original factory panel would be. He's had to slightly, this had already had one repair in this section, so he cut it out and he's had to reshape it slightly for the new panel to fit. The old panel, or what remains of it, is left around here on the floor. And you can see where there were holes, they thought, I know, we'll just put a load of black silicon sealer in there. So this, obviously, factory hole, but there's a big dob of sealer there, a big dob of sealer there, and a big dob of sealer there. And then these areas were where it was particularly rotten and just punched out. So that is the offside rear valance. This area here was mostly made of filler. And just tapping the side of it once we'd taken the paint off was caused most of it to fall out. But yeah, pretty good repair panels for an 02. So yeah, a bit of a luxury for us really. compared to 28s and so on. So yeah, it's a lovely, 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 nice 70s orange colour. So that's that one. Oh. Right, come with me if you will. So this month we're just going to look at primarily the O2 and then the 635 that we've been working on. So you have seen the floor corners cleaned away in February's episode and the beginnings of the repairs to the sill and structure. Basically completed it today. The cedar is still wet, so careful where I put my fingers. So this was the worst of the two front floor corners. You can see we've completely rebuilt the pad, the mudguard mount, and the radius of the floor. When this was all cut away, we did find that the bottom of the inner A pillar, which I obviously can't show you now, was also, there was a small hole there, and Graham's welded that up. Same on the other side. And then this area, the inner triangle here, the axle carrier mount, and the end of the sill around here. So all this has been cut out. If you remember, there was 2 or 3 patches along here and it had made this really uneven. It might be a bit difficult to see because of the light from coming in from the doorway, but there were several levels along here where there was 2 or 3 patches. That's all been made out of one panel now. That's one piece, floor repaired. Can't show you the axle carriers because it's on a plinth for sealing, but if you come around this side, you can see that we've repaired this outer section here. All the inner, you'll remember, was very corroded on this car. Again, unfortunately, our mandate only takes us up to here, so we know that this element is mostly made of filler, and exactly what resides under there, I don't know, but for our remit, was to stick to the seal as best as we can. The owner of this car is planning to have a full paint respray done on it in the future, so dare say it will come back to us to address these bits and pieces. Same on the other side. This sill panel required less work. It still needed some of the inner doing, but again, we know that there's corrosion here, and we know that there is filler here. But we have rebuilt this section with the factory jacking point, drain holes, and all the inner. So yeah, fab for this month. You will notice that the E32, the 740, is primed. So that's becoming a running job again. We've got more authority from the customer to continue work on this car. So we're going to finish it off and then we're going to prepare it for paint. And that will be exciting when it goes. Here we are down with the text. It is so bright. There's so much light coming in through that door. I could almost do with a pair of sunglasses. But here we are, another month and another bronzite beige E28. This one is a 525E. This is actually one of the earliest private projects that I took on. This car predates most of the staff, which probably sounds really bad from the point of view of this video, but the owner went off to Canada on a boat building contract and said, I'm in no hurry for it, which as a piece of good advice for anyone looking to deal with a classic car restoration business, never say things like that. We no longer do what are generally referred to as hospital jobs. Here now, cars come in, they get started, and we keep going on them until they are done. But this is a very historic job. And as I say, one of the first private jobs I accepted. Subsequently, it has been with us throughout COVID. Fabulous customer, very enabling, and wanting a really high-spec job. So this year I decided that we absolutely had to finish it. Want to get it finished and deliver it to him, and he is actually coming to visit for the first time in May, so that'll be exciting. Cars came back from paint about 6 weeks to 2 months ago on the client's behest. We actually gave it a bit of a break before we started putting it back together again. He's ready to go again, and we are chomping at the bit. So Martin has started. As you can see, this was a rolling shell until about the third week of March. The engine was built up in advance. So this was one of the engines that was on a stand round there last month. It is a 2.7 M20 based engine. We stripped the cylinder head off this one. This engine ran really well, really well. And before the client went on his boat building contract, he did actually used to commute from somewhere on the south coast, Fareham I think it was, up to Scotland to build boats there. So once a week he used to drive this 525E from the south coast to Scotland, which is incredible. So the engine actually in pretty good health, did run really well, but we pulled it out primarily to paint the engine bay, and once we'd done so, we drained the oil out of it. Having been here for quite a few years, we wanted to service it, new gaskets, timing belt, and maybe dress it. But on draining the oil, we actually discovered that there was condensation in the oil. Further investigation work did actually reveal that it had head gasket failure. So despite having had brand new coolant put in it before it came here, it must have been an overheating issue at some point with the car, and that was just in the post. So we have ended up doing an engine strip down, cylinder head overhaul, camshaft, rocker shafts, eccentrics, rocker arms, and so on. We've done nothing to the bottom end other than clean it up. So the whole engine, all the aluminium was sent off to be vapor blasted, and it's now been coated in a high temperature satin lacquer finish, so it will hopefully stay like this. New gaskets, obviously, all the way through. As I say, camshaft, rocker shafts, rockers, eccentrics, all the valve gear basically replaced. Exhaust manifold blasted, skimmed, and finished in a high temperature satin black. Alternator's been rebuilt, new thermostat housing, hoses, ignition components, and a brand new set of leads. So it ran well before, it's going to run like a Swiss watch now. So this car, as I say, is pretty extensive restoration, had quite a lot of welding. It wasn't horribly rotten, but it actually transpired that once we stripped the paint off it, there was actually quite a lot of previous accident damage, including, my favourite, was that at some stage or other, evidently it had been driven through a barrier, because there was a great big dent in either side of the A-pillar. So that was a slightly comedy thing to find. But yeah, so the car was bare metalled, and it's had a complete respray in its original bronzed beige metallic paint. This is the very beginning of putting the car back together. You can see all the wiring is starting to go in. We are retrofitting air conditioning into this car, which is becoming quite a popular mod. We've done quite a few now. This one's having a headliner retrimmed, and this has a really lovely Neutra brown leather interior to go in it. And we will be putting heated seats in this one. The next ramp, we've got a 318i E30. This belongs to a great customer of ours, a regular. He's really committed to making this car as nice as it can be. Slowly, we're going through it bit by bit. So it's had suspension, springs, bushes, arms, ball joints, and so on. What we're doing at the moment, Lewis, drive shafts, that's it, isn't it? So as you can see, the old drive shafts looking rather manky. The boots are all cracked, perished, a couple are leaking, which is an MOT failure, although I think Lewis has wiped them off in order to make them easier to handle. So we've got two lovely brand new drive shafts to go in, doing a couple of exhaust rubbers, and we have already done an oil service on this car. So yeah, it's a nice one. It is a nice one. Moving next door, one of my absolute favourite cars. Unfortunately, it's covered in dust, and I should probably just say there's quite a lot of building work going on site at the moment, and it is an unfortunate byproduct that stuff is getting dusty. But this is the last car that Roald Dahl, the children's author, ordered before he sadly died. He never actually drove the car, but we had it confirmed by the original dealer, which was Hewing Motors, that this was the last car that Roald Dahl ordered before he died. The last registered keeper on the car was Tessa Dahl. We actually put this car back on the road about 3, maybe 4 years ago now. It was rescued from the Roald Dahl estate by a local scrap company. Somebody intervened and bought it from them. It then went to a specialist breaker, I think, and a friend of the business purchased it, contacted me and said, would I be interested in recommissioning this car? When he told me over the phone it was green with a red interior, I just thought, really? That's like a gnome's underpants. But in real life, it works. It is absolutely lovely, in my opinion. The current owner has just had the interior fully recolonized, repaired and recolonized, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Long-term classic Bahnstormers fans will probably remember it from before. The interior was always really good, but I mean, it really is fantastic work. It was done by the Anglian polishing company, whom we use for our colonizing, and I have to say, hats off. This is a fabulous job. It was good before, but now it really is as good as new. So the car's in to sort out some niggles, including a rattling noise that was coming from the wipers, seemed to be a bent wiper arm. Malfunctioning electrics to do with the boot, as is quite common on E34s. The wiring loom had started to break up on the hinges. So that's been replaced with a brand new loom, all functioning beautifully now. And various bits of trim being changed, so side mouldings, what have you. Yeah, it is a stellar car, really, really nice. It's a 3.5 litre auto, and it is just a beautiful car to drive, one of my favourites. So finally, we've got a 316. So this must have been one of the last carburetted cars on an E-Prefix. It's still a chrome bumper car. I have seen one plastic bumper car, which was a bronzic one on a carburetor. But yeah, this is a 316 carb. Came in with running issues, and it is phenomenally low mileage. Like most low mileage cars though, mileage is an interesting one. It's a bit like aeroplanes. Obviously, the lower miles it's got, the less stress on the airframe. With cars, that normally translates to a lack of corrosion and underbody damage. But mileage doesn't necessarily indicate condition, and in this case, absolutely everything on this car is original. The belts, the spark plugs, the HT leads, all the rubber is original, so consequently, it might be very low mileage, but it also is a 40-year-old car nearly that hasn't really had any maintenance or been serviced. So it ran badly, it drove badly, and that's why it's here. We've been slowly correcting the running issues. The alternator had been rebuilt, and maybe someone forgot to attach some of the more relevant electrical components. But once we worked that out and got the battery charging, Rob's been spending a fair bit of time on it, getting it to run, setting up the carburetor, changing the emissions, replacing HT leads. We've done a full inspection to service on this, so it is running really nicely now. Can I start it? No, I can't start it. Next time. Anyway, so there you go. That's this month's T-Stroll. Hope you enjoyed it. Look out for next month.